LOL is a 2012 American teen romantic comedy drama written and directed by Lisa Azuelos. It's a remake of the 2008 film of its title, also directed by Azuelos. The film stars Miley Cyrus. So if you like Demi Moore as a teenager and blame it on Rio, here she is many years later as a mom. Ashley Greene and Adam Savani. The film received a limited release in the U.S. on May 4th, 2012 by Lionsgate, formerly a studio, which handicapped it after being reeled back from a broad release and had an overall negative critical reception. The film missed its budget box office gross by only $500,000. Yeah, it was an $11 million budget. It made $10.5. The basic premise of LOL is we have a girl. She lives with her mom. She's got friends, and she was going out with this guy, and they broke up at the beginning of the movie, and she likes this other guy, and he likes her. Yeah, and he likes her. Stuff happens. The boy and her break up after a period of time. There's just a lot of just like a day in the life of these teenagers and all their bullshit drama. But the crux of the movie is essentially Demi Moore trying to connect with her daughter, and her daughter able to hide enough of what's going on in her world in her journal, and keeping communications to chatting and online and text and all of that. So the mom feels like, I don't know how to communicate with you. I don't know how to read you. I don't know what's going on with you. I just know you're an asshole, and I don't know why. And then this is like the whole thing. She reads her journal and flips the fuck out about it, which causes the daughter to be like, that's an invasion of privacy. How could you do this? Leaves home, goes to live with the dad, realizes that's not the answer either. Goes back and reconciles with the mom, reconciles with the boyfriend, and lobster. I'm going to read this real quick. The major differences between the French film LOL in 2008 and its American remake lie in the cultural context and tone. The French version focuses more on subtle emotional nuances. Take a drink every time we say that tonight. Exploring teenage life, family dynamics, and relationships with a more grounded, introspective approach. The American version adapts for the U.S. audience, incorporating pop culture, technology, and social media, giving it a more glossy commercial feel. Additionally, the French version is more focused on the mother-daughter bond, while the U.S. remake shifts more of the attention to teenage romance and coming-of-age elements. I'm going to start with you here, Mick. This would have made a much better television show. It makes a shit movie. And part of the reason I think it makes a shit movie is if I can't remember the technical term for it, but if like the high climax moment of this movie is Demi Moore finding the journal, waiting until the beginning of the third act was not good structure.
Right.
Like, we are way too far into this movie for there suddenly to be that, because then they have to like resolve it in a scene. I watched this with my kids, and I jokingly said it on a different podcast. By the end of that movie, they were like, this movie hurt us as children. Fuck this movie. We're going to bed now.
Wave goodbye to your childhood innocence. Goodbye, childhood innocence. Goodbye, goodbye.
They were both like, nothing happens in this movie. When finally something does happen, it's the end of the movie. Why? Why would you do this to us? And they ran away screaming. Amazingly, they handled Joker better than they handled LOL. The Radulich children, everybody, your future leaders. With that said, I yield the floor to you, Mik Wanamaker. Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, so like I said before, this reminded me a lot of Cyberbully, which came out in 2011. And why it reminded me of that was the teenage drama that was going on with the high school shit, and that people were going into relationships with this person and that person. But like Cyberbully takes a darker tone. But it came out in 2011. It has I'm trying to remember the person, Emily Osment, who did it way better than than Miley did. Because it just like Miley, I felt like she took her serious acting and tried to hone it in, but it didn't exactly work for me. But I'm also used to seeing her as Hannah Montana. Because like at that point she was going out of the whole Miley Cyrus thing, and she was trying to find herself.
Well, she was going out of the Hannah Montana thing and becoming more Miley Cyrus.
Right. And so when she was trying to find herself, going into a serious actor role made sense. But no, in the Wanamaker compromise that we've just made up, I was entertained. It was hilarious in that factor, but like it also reminded me of the whole like internet situation that was happening when I was a teenager. But if something happened, everyone knew about it. And so I think he did that really well.
I don't know how many of you ever watched the show My So-Called Life. Not that I watched a lot of it, but it had Sean, and then you can kind of riff from here. This had very My So-Called Life vibes to it, where like I'm just following this girl and her. Like I said, this would have made a much better television like drama than it did a 2-hour movie, because I think like it spends too long in certain areas that aren't that interesting, and then it has to speed up through the stuff that is interesting. And I don't know if Azuelos, in trying to cater to an American audience, did this movie any favors.
Well, I had a point that was like that. What you're talking about was literally the generation. So my generation was the creepypasta. It was the whatever Slenderman. It came before Poppy Playtime, whatever. And I understood what you're talking about. Like a lot of people wouldn't appreciate this at this time, which I run into a lot working at a Halloween store, because we literally have sections at the kids section that's Poppy Playtime, and I never understood why, because that's not a kid's game.
Poppy Playtime, is that like Bluey?
No.
Well, but that's the thing is even if they're not the ones that are making it, that's still the generation that's kind of eating this stuff up with a spoon, really, and that's who it's being geared towards. And it kind of feels like, even if I kind of got the exact generations a little bit wrong, I still feel like there's still a point to be made about the fact that this is kind of, and don't get me wrong, we've talked about how I feel about American Beauty before. And about how I feel like that's a movie that does not necessarily age well. But that came out in 2000 when I was a junior in high school, because I remember seeing that, and I think Fight Club in almost successive weekends.
Thank you, Shay. Shay Wall, for obviously watching the show. But her comment said, "I was the creepypasta generation. None of Hollywood has gotten it right."
Period.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Comer, but that was a good comment. So
no, but I mean, but that still kind of feels like, even if the generation is making it, that's a little bit older, that kind of still feels like the generation to whom that media belongs, and it feels like they're kind of coming into their own creatively as adults without some of the same influences of real substance that our generation. I think that's more like what I was trying to say, even if it got muddied in my maybe getting a few things mixed up, is, our generation, and by our I mean me, Mark, Mik, Dorian. I think we had this conversation when we all got together in Westport the other night to talk. I seem to remember, and it kind of makes me concerned for the fact that our generation got to grow up on social commentary and coming of age commentary and kind of meditations on the state of our generation. Like I said, like we had kids, we had Rent, we had American Beauty, Fight Club, movies like that. Whereas this feels so kindred to a lot of movies that, if these damn kids be eaten up nowadays, that I watch now, and I don't get the same sense of really that anyone is really trying to say anything, or that there's really anything to take away from it.
Well, taking it back to the movie for 1 second, what the movie was trying to get at was, and the fun thing about this particular podcast tonight is this has been the least movie crafty podcast I've done in quite some time, but it's fine. These podcasts go in the direction, we just go with the flow here. Be like water. So I don't mind the fact that, we're not focusing so much on craft tonight. So I'm going to throw in my 2 cents in terms of personal relatability to LOL. What I think the movie is getting at is something that I have very much struggled with as a parent. And that is, how do you communicate with your kids? How do you talk to your kids? How do you reach your kids? With the added hurdle of the internet and social media. I talk to my kids every day, every day that I have them, every day that I'm with them. And I'm asking them questions and I'm engaged with them and I am eliciting their opinions so that years from now, when they're on a podcast and the host throws it to them and says, "What do you think about this?" They go, I don't know, because no one's ever asked me my fucking opinion before. I don't know what the hell to say. So we're building those muscles now, see, for future generations. You ask kids what their opinions are so they become adults who have opinions.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point being, there's a blind spot that I struggle with. My son loves to tell me about the thing he found out on TikTok or steal someone else's bit wholesale and then regurgitate it to me as if it's his own, because he's like his father, he's a hack.
Kind of what I mean, yes.
And then I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, it's a thing I got from TikTok.
It's not stealing, it's borrowing without permission.
Sure.
With every
okay, but may I make a little bit of kind of, let's call this an open-faced compliment sandwich here for the time being, because I kind of, I said that whole negative thing, but you mentioned TikTok. I just want to throw this in real quick. There is something about that this younger generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that they have that I kind of wish we would have had when I was growing up, because it would have made my coming of age far less turbulent than it is. And that is the fact that one of the more positive things that I have seen about the embrace of TikTok in particular is, it has given neurodivergent kids and kids wrestling with a lot of the same traumas that we did as kids, and sometimes even are now as adults, a true forum and a platform and a creative tool through which they can communicate that. They can find bonds with each other. They can find common ground. They can help each other heal. They can help each other. They can help each other cope.
You kind of inadvertently hit on exactly what my problem is, which is what I was trying to get to. I don't know who my kids are talking to. I don't know what they're doing half the time. One's on a computer, the other one's on a phone, and I don't know. When I was a kid, back when this, men were men and the sheep were frightened 100 years ago.
What's the Garrison Keillor line from Lake Wobegon? His opener.
I would talk to my friends on the phone. My parents could visibly see me. And again, this is how old I am. Phones used to have a cord, ladies and gentlemen. And you are only a rich family if your cord stretched for 80 miles. See? And and so you could take the phone off the receiver in the kitchen and go into anywhere in the house with it. But you were still on the cord, see?
There were 2 other phones, according to history. That
Right.
Your parents could be listening in while they cover the receiver, so they're like,
so
they
my social
it.
outlets where I talk to kids at school or I talk to them on the phone, my parents could physically see me, and if I'm on the phone with my friends and I'm saying blah blah yakety schmackety, if my parents are that interested or that worried, they're there, they can see me, they're involved. I don't know who my kids are talking to. I don't know what they're talking about, and the only time when my daughter is on the computer, I don't know if she's on social media. I don't know if she's on YouTube. I don't know if she's on TikTok. I don't know if she's chatting with people. There was a point where we gave her Snapchat a few years ago. And I said to Melissa at the time, I'm like, what does she need to be doing with Snapchat? Isn't that for sharing dick pics and shit? And she was like, well, no, she likes to play. Yes, but that's not why she has it. She likes to play with the filters and stuff. And occasionally I would have to walk into Lily's room and be like, what are you doing and who are you doing it with? That's just me trying to wrap my head around parenting this aging child.
Which is fair.
Right. And and now again, the same thing with Jonas. Occasionally I look at his phone and I'd be like, show me who's texting you. Who are you who are you texting? Who's texting you? What kind of conversations are you having? Like, I don't know. Are you checking your camera or are you trying to interject?
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, you are trying to interject. Hang on, student. I will call on you. So my only point is, I think what LOL is trying to get at, and it doesn't quite get there because there are problems with the actual craft of the movie, is Demi Moore is this girl has this entire world going on that Demi Moore can't crack, and she's able to use the internet to hide so much of it, and what a frustration that is for a parent. Okay, now that I got you yawning, go.
No, that was my end cap for this. Was just like the fact when I brought up cyberbully, it was literally the point of like LOL, because they also had the text whatever happening, and like the modern way to say like, oh well, this person did this and this person did this, and so I just feel like it's definitely I guess it would be his generation too, but I remember it very distinctly.
Yeah, we're only 5 years different, babe.
All right, Dorian, you've peppered in here and there, but you haven't actually given your thoughts on the film. So why don't we do that before we have to go to the next segment?
No, that's fair. Sorry, the reason I was doing this was when you were talking about your son being on the phone, I was trying to give a visual of like
that you could be texting him for all I know. I have a friend who's going to come over in Dungeon Master a D&D session tomorrow, and I told Steve, I'm just like, look, here's the kid's phone number. You just text him directly. You don't have to go through me. And he was like, are you really okay with that? I'm like, don't send him dick pics. That's all I ask. And he was like, I think I can handle that.
Because of the bullying that I went through, because my legal guardians, for anyone who's tuning in that may be a fan of Sean Comer that hasn't seen me yet, I am an adopted kid, so I got through very stupid ideals sent to private Christian school, which is normally for rich people, and I was bullied the crap out of. I actually liked this movie because I was like, dude, I feel you. I feel every inch of this, even though Miley Cyrus is older than me. I remember watching this on the big screen and being like, dude, I feel it. Because again, when your dad owns a construction company and the person raising me is a firefighter who is not going to make as much money.
Cop.
I'm sorry?
Sean's father was
Dad was a cop.
Fair play. Sorry, I thought you said top, and I was like, okay, you can top that. Go ahead.
Well, if my father was a bottom, but that's not what we're here to discuss.
No, it was my way of saying Dorian, I feel you.
And so like this movie, I actually enjoyed this movie. Like again, I wouldn't be like, oh my god, you have to watch LOL, because if you do not, oh my god, but it's like I felt it because there were a lot of people in theater that I would text and be like, this is my legal guardians are screaming outside my bedroom, and I'm just being like, ugh.
Yeah.
So like screaming at you outside your bedroom?
What they would do is they would, and this wasn't just at the house. We were also going to church at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There would be the sanctuary where the pastor's, giving the, his sermon, and you could hear Michael and Cammie, or excuse me, what was it always you call them, Mark?
Churchy McGee.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Churchy McGee screaming at each other at the top of their goddamn lungs. Jeez. And I'm sitting there being like, I have nothing to do with this. I'm the kid. I'm sorry. Oh. And then everyone giving me looks like, wow. Like it's my fault. It's like, yes, I'm 6. I have the power to be like, stop. I have spoken. So again, this movie spoke to me in the sense that it's like I felt the understanding of the bullying. I got, again, the since we've talked about the difference between generations, the whole wedgie and swirly thing. Oh dear sweet God.
Dorian, if you don't mind, let me interject something really quick.
Please.
You said something and it triggered a thing in my head. My daughter, neither one of my kids loved the movie, but my daughter, it reached my daughter in a way that was deeply personal. She could identify with the characters. She could identify with the interpersonal drama.
Mhm.
My daughter is both asexual and aromantic.
Okay.
And I know that because we had a 2-hour-long conversation about that. And there's a couple of different things that all kind of pinged at once. So my daughter watched this movie and she could at least empathize with these teens having personal strife, even if romantic connection and dating and all of that isn't something that particularly interests her, and neither does sex. And my son thought this was the worst movie he'd ever seen, for the same reason why the conversation in the car where Lily and I were talking about asexualism and aromanticism and where we both lie on both of those spectrums, and my son wanting to throw himself out of the fucking car because not one time did we mention Deadpool's penis. Not once. And, and so, I have a 10-year-old boy who doesn't really want to talk about romantic relationships or non-romantic relationships. He wants to talk about comic books and weird shit. And then there's my daughter who, while she's not personally drawn to romantic relationships or sexual feelings, is interested in how people relate to each other, how their relationships work.
Well, your son's like 9, right?
He's 10, yeah.
He's 10.
10. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, he's acting like a 10-year-old boy. I don't hold that against him. But it was funny to me because, like, so much of both of the... I mean, when I started taking my kids to the movies, I was taking them to... Well, when I started taking them to the movies, I was taking them to the cartoons. But, when I started taking them to the live action stuff, it was a lot of the Marvel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they grew up on action. They grew up on big-time action and science fiction. So we're expanding into different areas. So I showed them LOL, and my son's like, and that he's not used to watching that kind of a thing, and he's not interested in what those people are doing on screen. On top of which, it's not the world's best paced movie. I cut you off, Dorian, but I kind of wanted to throw that in there because as hearing you talk about how the movie resonated with you reminded me of how it resonated with my daughter.
That's fair.
Yeah. And again, Lily, if you're watching, I say this with all respect and not trying to be weird in your way. We need to hang out.
Yes, Dorian. Next time you come to Tampa, you can hang out with both my kids.
Again, it was just the whole bullying thing of the situation and being cheated on, even when you're doing everything right. And again, in my case, when I got cheated on, I was being horrifically romantic. Again, flowers for no reason. Because again,
No, I'm sorry, Mark went.
There was a lot in that gesture, but I don't have an hour and a half.
I know.
I mean, we do. We just have to edit it down.
Sorry. I was literally just laughing at Mark.
And it was just, again, this movie, I felt really attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not only seeing it on the big screen in this first run, while I was being bullied.
It's so funny to me. Like, I'm here to talk about Blame It on Rio, and I had to find 2 other movies just to pair with it. And the one movie that everyone's just like, can we talk about more about LOL? Can we just push these other 2 movies to the side? Let's just focus on LOL. I'm like, I literally went, oh, that one's got Miley Cyrus in it, and it's fairly new. I should be able to find it easy. It's so funny how that happened. Like, I picked it on a lark, and it's like the thing that's drawing everyone's attention. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I had to throw that.
No, you're good. Again, I'm landing the plane right now. Is this, again, the bullying and being cheated on thing spoke to me because it was happening to me. And again, as you yourself, Mr. Radulich, brought up earlier, when you're doing everything you can and you're still getting shit for it. This movie came out at the perfect time for me. Do I think it's the most amazing movie that everyone should see? No. God, no. But it worked for me at the time. And again, I would love to work with Miley Cyrus. I think she's fantastic. She's become a far better actor, over the years. It's just
her episode of Black Mirror is fantastic.
Oh, hell yeah.